Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at a Fox News clip that has a panel discussing the Ohio train derailment and how Pete Buttigieg has completely botched that job. We have the same panel talking about all the craft, the UFOs, the UAPs, the objects that are being shot out of the sky all across the United States, and we'll give you updates on that as well. And lastly, we have Californians leaving the state that's affecting other states in the union. As always, support the show by hitting that like and subscribe button. Leave us a short, sweet comment down below. Your help and support would be greatly appreciated. Well, we have here a panel that's on Fox News that is discussing the Ohio train derailment and how Pete Buttigieg has completely botched this job. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Bringing our panel, Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen, former Republican National Committee Communications Director Douglas High, and Steph Kite, politics reporter at Axios. You know, there's a lot of concern from, obviously, Steph, the Ohio delegation. This story didn't get picked up for a number of days nationally. And, you know, there was some criticism.
I mean, not just picked up, but even now, if you look at the legacy media, NBC, CBS, ABC, there's something around like 30 minutes of coverage combined that they put into this story. So some might correlate that to the fact that they're still trying to cover for the Biden administration. There's all these crises taking place across the United States, right? You have the immigration crisis, you have inflation crisis, you have the eggs crisis, you also have the foreign policy crisis. You literally have all these train derailments, crises taking place. Just in Arizona the other day, they literally had to block off an entire area because there's toxic gas or something like that being exposed to everybody. So all these things are taking place, and if you don't cover it, then the hope is that nobody notices it. That's kind of the objective they're doing here. But let's continue.
Criticism about the transportation secretary not addressing it directly.
Yeah, you know, this is yet another transportation crisis that the Secretary Buttigieg is having to deal with. You know, looking back to January when there were the issues where the FAA had to ground planes, there was the Southwest fiasco in December around the holidays. And this really goes to show that, you know, this kind of rising star in the Democratic Party is having to deal with very real crises, and it's opening him up to attacks from the right, which we've seen already. Republicans quick to criticize him and really draw attention to the issue and trying to make it clear that it's something that
I love that she says that this person's a rising star. Again, we see this time after time after time. We've talked about it in yesterday's episode, where if you suck at your job, it automatically makes you a rising star in the Democrat Party. And furthermore, I love how she says that Republicans were quick to attack. We're not quick to attack. It literally went on for the matter of days, and you did a controlled burn of chemicals that were now falling on a local town and now in other states that is leading to the death of animals. So don't give me this of, well, Republicans are quick to go after him. The guy was nowhere to be seen. It's literally his job. And so rather than going on panels and talking about equity, justice and equality and all these things and correlating to how construction workers that are trying to uplift certain communities aren't a good representation racially of those very communities. Rather than talking about that, how about you kind of get boots on the ground there and you show up at this place and have a good PR moment going like, hey, you know what? I'm here. I'm trying to handle it. I'm in person. We're trying to figure out what's going on. You know, you need to have that type of movement, but no, this Biden administration wants to be out there grandstanding, pushing this equity thing in front of everybody because it's their number one issue, rather than actually taking care of the American people and making sure people are safe. Now you're lying to them going, well, the air is fine. You're good to come back in your homes, even though their plants are saturated with chemicals, their vehicles are saturated with chemicals, their houses are saturated with chemicals. Some of this stuff is invisible to the naked eye, that the only way that you know that it's there is if you tested for it and wipe the surfaces. But this is what they're going to push. And you got somebody from Axios here saying, well, Republicans are just quick to go after them. Give me a break.
He mishandled, and trying to get him to, you know, speak to the issue more. He did take to Twitter last night to kind of acknowledge that the situation is ongoing, that he's keeping watch on it. But it was clear that he was responding to some of the criticism from Republicans and also some Democrats as well.
Yeah, and there are some Democrats as well. We should point out that Governor DeWine did talk to President Biden, and the president said, whatever you need. But there is this criticism about how you're dealing with this major kind of toxic situation.
Well, it's yet another crisis where he's not on the job. I mean, the reality, he was just at a panel the other day in Washington, D.C., didn't mention this entire thing, made jokes about balloons and, you know, talking about, you know, people in
well, let me just play that soundbite just so everybody hears it.
We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, you know, doing the good paying jobs don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Yeah, talking about racial
Who cares about the racial makeup? Again, it's not about somebody's color of their skin. It's about their character. But we can't talk about that anymore because then you're a bigot and somehow you're a racist, even though Martin Luther King talked about that very same thing. As long as you're uplifting the community, you're rebuilding it, you're making it a better place to live and do work in and do business in, who cares regarding those that are doing the work as long as the work is getting done? But this is the Democrat Party for you. Again, one of their main platforms for the Department of Transportation that we talked about yesterday is literally equity, making sure you have 50% of this, 50% of that, a quarter of this, a quarter of that, and it's all race. It's all about race. It's not about character. It's not about the fact that you can do the job. If for some reason it's all about race, and somebody left in the comments, and I do appreciate the fact that you guys do leave comments. If you haven't already, leave them below. I do read them, and maybe I should start talking about them more on the show here. Somebody mentioned, oh, you know, it always seems like you're talking about people of color and how they're not necessarily equipped to do the job, even though that if they were a diversity hire, they could have competence and actually able to do the job, or if they were a diversity hire, that over the time of doing that job, you can gain basically the certain qualities and things you need to do that job. I 100% agree, but things shouldn't be predicated on race whatsoever. I don't care about somebody's color of their skin. I care about if they're able to do the job, and I care about the fact that what their character is or isn't. I don't care about race. So I do agree with what that person's saying, but my point is that remove race from everything. The color of your skin, the amount of melanin that you produce in your skin, who cares? It has nothing to do with what's up here and if you could do the job. That's my whole point here. So I'm sorry if some point comes across misconstrued, but I can only be so clear. I don't care about race whatsoever. I'm sure we got a lot of people from different ethnicities, backgrounds, countries, races that watch the Bald Brad Show. I hope so. And we shouldn't care at all about race. We should care about somebody's character and their integrity. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Divide there, but he did not mention this.
No, and you know, Governor DeWine is holding a press conference, and where's Pete Buttigieg? Why isn't he on site helping to manage this? Why isn't he bringing the resources to the Treasury Department? It seems that every time the what hits the fan, he's somewhere else. You know, he was in Portugal during the rail strike crisis. He was on maternity leave and during the 2001 supply chain crisis, and he's AWOL now. You know, this is not a good look for him if he wants to have a political future.
Obviously, the EPA.
Great freaking point, man. Thank you, God. By the way, Washington Post, making sense here, making a lot of sense. I know we're always quick to judge some of these media outlets or these newspapers or just reporters. We can't go after everybody here, folks. Doing a great job of calling them out here. But if you notice, Pete Buttigieg not being around when something happens or there's a crisis, it kind of comes from the head that kind of runs everything. And his name is Joe Biden. If you notice, he's nowhere to be found at all on any of this. I mean, we do every single press briefing. How many times do we have to show a clip of the reporters going, hey, when can we get an interview from this guy? When can he be on the podium to talk to us and take unvetted questions? Is he going to talk about the UFOs, the UAPs that have been shot out of the sky at any moment in time? Is he going to actually be talking about the southern border and what's going on there and his solutions to fix it? Like, he's nowhere to be found on any crisis, if you notice that. And it's the same thing with his administration, those that are actually running the Department of Transportation, maybe the Department of Treasury, the Department of Energy, whatever it may be. Like, very rarely do you actually see some of these people. And even more than that, very rarely do you actually see Joe Biden. So it's rare to see Pete Buttigieg. It's rare to see all these other people like Janet Yellen and others, but it's extremely rare to see the president that's kind of running the show on some of this stuff, or should be at least helping out some way, shape, or form, and giving the American people some sort of safety of, hey, you know what, we're shooting all these things out of the sky, but this is what they are. We'll get into that in the second segment, but let's continue.
He's on ground too, Doug, and that's a big part of this testing and make sure that it's safe.
Sure. And look, there's a dirty little secret in politics that we don't talk about very often, and that's it. It's okay to tell the truth. And that is especially true if you don't know the answer. You buy credibility in saying, we don't know, we're looking in this, we're going to get answers. If you say we still have more questions than we have answers, that's fine to do. You can't do it 3 times a week, then you look like you never know anything. But occasionally, tell that truth that you don't know and you're looking into it. That buys you time to get those answers. And that's one of the things that we haven't seen from the secretary, who's reputed to be one of the real all-star communicators in this administration, and it just doesn't pan out all the time.
Yeah. And speaking of not knowing things, here is the senators receiving a classified briefing.
So if you notice about this Ohio train derailment, they're treating it just as any other story, not Fox News, but the White House itself, treating it as if, oh, you know, it's just another problem, or should I say issue? They wouldn't even classify it as a problem. It's just another thing. Everything's fine. Everything's A-okay. If you ever hear the White House talking about that, think the opposite, because they call the southern border an issue now. Before it was a challenge. In reality, it was a crisis. They say the same thing about inflation, right? They actually literally redefined the word recession to fit the narrative, the fact that everything's A-okay. You're not losing a bunch of money. Your retirement's fine. Oh, you can go to the grocery store, even though the average American has lost over $4,000 in the past year since Joe Biden's taken office as well. So, I mean, there's all these things taking place, and none of it's an issue, guys. And by the way, none of it's Joe Biden's fault, according to him. Well, this same line of craziness is continued here in our second segment, where we're discussing with this panel the objects that are being shot out of the sky willy-nilly. And we got a lot of updates here to supply to you from this panel as well as myself. Let's go ahead and roll it.
On these shoot downs and what they're telling us.
For 65 years, NORAD had never identified an object and taken down an object out of the sky until 10 days ago.
There are also routine sightings, and have been for years, of objects that we have difficulty discerning exactly what they are, whose they are, what their purpose is.
What's different about the last 2 weeks is that we've started shooting them down.
A lot of this information, people say make it public, but a lot of it is classified.
99% of the information we were just briefed on, there's no reason it can't be shared with the American people.
Thank you, Marco.
I mean, it's pretty unbelievable if you look at it, Steph. What we don't have are pictures of these three unidentified objects that the planes eventually shut down. They missed one with a Sidewinder missile that we reported last night.
Can we just talk about that really quick? Because this is one of the updates I want to give you. So they actually released the audio of these fighter pilots. I think they were in the F-15s, basically describing this object, and give credence to a little bit of what John Kirby was saying, of him saying, well, we got to humble ourselves. We don't really know what it was. So I actually had to backtrack and apologize to John Kirby, because he was really correct on that. With the audio of these fighter pilots, they were literally saying it was too small, that it was basically stationary, and they're having a really difficult time of actually observing it because it was so tiny and the speeds that they were going at, and also saying they were too close. And to observe it, because it was so tiny, you had to get close to it. But the closer you are to that object, and based on your speed, it's really hard to actually identify what it is. And so their consensus basically was a balloon. So this plays into what is being said here by Brett, of the fact of, well, we just spent almost $500,000, $500,000, missing the object first. And then we spent another $500,000, $500,000 to blow the thing up. So virtually we spent $1 million plus the gas and fuel and everything that goes into these fighter jets looking at this thing to blow up basically a party balloon. And I don't know if in fact it was a party balloon. I'm speculating, but based on what the audio was saying, it seems like, you guys, it was literally just a party balloon. This is the one off of Lake Huron or whatever it was. So you got to love the fact that the Biden administration is just now blowing things willy-nilly out of the sky because some kid lost his balloon at his birthday party. But that's the Biden administration for you. Can you imagine anything different with that guy? I mean, he literally doesn't know he's president. He calls Vice President Kamala Harris president. So, I guess we shouldn't expect anything different, but it also makes our military look bad, and it kind of gives credibility to the fact of why they're not releasing photos. It gives credibility why they're not talking about this. It gives credibility why Joe Biden's hiding in the bunker once again, because it just makes him look bad that he freaking wasted $1 million to shoot a party balloon out of the sky.
And we just don't have a lot of information, other than now there's this inclination to say it might just be weather balloons or exploratory things from people and companies.
Yeah, we're certainly hearing from senators on both sides of the aisle who are pushing for more transparency. They think the American public needs to know more about what went down over the weekend, what we do know about these unidentified objects. So far, briefers have told senators it seems that they have not been able to identify those objects, have not been able to recover those objects that were shot down, and that's part of the problem with the lack of information. They're still trying to find those, especially given kind of the more rural areas where these things were shot down. They were more difficult to locate, but I'm sure we're going to continue to see pressure from Republicans, especially for President Biden to speak to this and address the American people on this.
Speaking of which, the White House press secretary dealt with a lot of those questions today.
Why hasn't the president come forward and spoken to the American people about this?
And look, the president's taking this very seriously, and he's receiving briefings regularly from his national security advisors, and he's going to continue to do that. We are sharing as much information as we can, as possible, but we do want to make sure that the American people understand that there's no need to panic.
Does anybody else feel reassured that Karine Jean-Pierre the diversity hire that literally is the worst press secretary in modern history. I don't care if somebody's even another Democrat. I mean, I thought Jen Psaki was bad, but I called it early on that Karine Jean-Pierre was going to be worse than Jen Psaki. We'd have to go back into the footage and actually release that statement. But regardless, how about getting the president on the podium and reassuring the American public that we're not being, observed by our foreign adversaries, whether it's China or Russia or whatever it may be. I mean, literally, we just shot a Russian drone out of the sky in Syria that was spying on areas around there as well. So this stuff's happening all the time. I'm not saying it was Russia flying over our airspace, but it would be nice to see the president of the United States standing in front of the American people and actually addressing what the hell's going on. It's not like every day we just have fighter jets scrambling for a week straight, shooting stuff out of the sky. But I really do think, you guys, it was just literally a balloon. And now he looks like an idiot because he shot balloons out of the sky, and one of which missed. We can't even shoot a balloon out of the sky. It makes you look weak, you guys. It makes it look really terrible if you can't even shoot a freaking party balloon from a kid's birthday party out of the sky.
Okay, so 4 unidentified objects shot down over our territory in 8 days. And one of this most recent one was over Lake Huron. That's in the middle of the country. I mean, did they notice this thing coming into the country, or did they pick it up while it was crossing the country? Why did they wait till it was over Lake Huron?
Great question, because another update here, we have news coming out that Chinese spy balloon had been tracked. Our government was literally tracking it from the moment that it left China. So Joe Biden, the idiot that he is, our government knew about this spy balloon and just let it freaking glide from China all across the United States, and we finally shot it down. Let that sink in, you guys. This guy sucks at his job on everything. He can't do a single thing right. I'm sure he could find something he's done right. I'm sure you could find something. You can do that with everybody. A clock is right twice a day at least. But you could find that there. So this guy that's a freaking empty-headed dullard that's running the show doesn't know how to do his job, so he just lets the Chinese just run roughshod over our entire country. Oh, goody, goody. Glad our commander-in-chief is a great commander.
So is this the normal pace of operations that's going on here, or has this just been a sudden surge in the last few weeks? We don't know this. And why this is a problem is because this, it's not just an espionage problem. China, especially with that weather balloon, could be testing our defenses. Jack Keane has said that that the balloon program is connected to their hypersonic missile program. They could be with the ideal way to deliver an EMP, which would take out all of our electronics, all of our power grid.
Which is essentially a nuclear bomb that would hover someplace and then go off and then take out electrical.
Exactly. So the former general who's the
other side of that, the news that's coming out on what some people are saying it is that, but also kind of testing our communication. So they're thinking that it wasn't anything in terms of surveillance with cameras or photos or anything like that. They say it had something to do with our communications and the Wi-Fi and the antennas that are around, things like that. And I'm curious if they're trying to kind of locate or run how we do our communication system, because if you know anything about how we basically just stampeded over Iraq in the Iraq War, I think, what was that, 1991 was the Gulf War. We basically took out the third biggest military in the world in a matter of like a week. One of the effects of us doing that was to be able to take out their communication systems relatively quickly. And so that could happen to us here in the United States with the Chinese knowing everything about us in terms of how our communications ran, our Wi-Fi, our signals, how that stuff's happened. So I think both are a terrible problem if you're going to drop an EMP on everybody, especially at high altitudes like that, and just the radius that would give. You guys, this is such a massive issue. And where's Joe Biden? Again, where's Joe Biden? Nowhere to be found. He's in a bunker somewhere. He's sleeping. He's taking nap time. He's on his little sippy warm milk.
World expert on EMP says the perfect way to deliver one of those is with a balloon. And so they're penetrating our defenses. They're testing our capability, and NORAD is coming up short. Yes. And we got to get to the bottom of this, because this is a huge. What if we get into a conflict or a face-off over Taiwan? And they can hover a balloon over our country and threaten to take out our power grid if we defend Taiwan. This is a huge deterrence issue. This is a huge national security issue. We've got to get to the bottom of it.
And should we hear from the president, Doug?
We should hear from the president on this, and it's been a long time for us not to hear from the president. Every time somebody sees one of these, they are rightfully concerned. And I should say, the reassurance is, don't worry, it's not the aliens. Exactly what the aliens want us to believe. You should be mindful of that.
I'm going to save this.
I mean, it sounds like a joke, and he's basically quoting Karine Jean-Pierre there of saying, oh, it's fine, and there's a lot of talk about aliens. It's not aliens, and that's actually led to a lot of people coming out, conspiracy theorists, thinking that it's actually aliens. I have a feeling, you guys, it's literally just balloons. That kind of seems like what it is. And the reason why I'm leaning towards that direction and not leaning towards that poll that I sent out in the community tab of, oh, is it alien spacecraft? Is it like a special experiment or things like that? Is of how long it's taken for the Biden administration to come out and really address this and kind of tell us what it is. So I think it is balloons, and it's just really embarrassing the fact that Joe Biden just decided to shoot balloons out of the sky rather than really having the intelligence and the wherewithal to really analyze it well enough to know, like, hey, I probably shouldn't waste $1 million and actually miss a shot of a missile that cost us $500,000. It just makes everybody look bad, including the president and our military. Well, moving into our last segment of the day. If you guys haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. If you haven't gotten your coffee yet, what are you doing, folks? Grab the cup of coffee, take the time to write in the live chat. We have a lot of fun. I'm in there with you, saying what's up, how's life, what's going on here, commenting on these stories, dealing with Joe Biden being a knucklehead just as all of you are. And again, leave a comment down below. Help a brother out a little bit, a fellow patriot. Well, this news story talks about new census data that has revealed 700,000 people have abandoned California in 2 years. Now, before you get on your high horse, folks, for all of those that live in free America, because I live in the state of California, probably the least freest nation in the freaking union, don't get upset when you see a Californian necessarily come into your state. Some of the time, you guys, you should be really glad that you have a Californian come into your state, and I'll tell you why in just one moment. Nearly 750,000 people have left California in a 2-year period, which is just crazy. I mean, that is literally a mass exodus. According to the most recent census data, California's population has dropped more than 500,000 between April 2020 and July 2022, with nearly 700,000 residents leaving the state. Nearly half of the state's population loss is attributed to Los Angeles, one of California's largest cities. You want to know why? Is because you have a massive homeless population. A quarter of the country's homeless population lives in one county in the United States. 25% of literally the entire United States homeless population is in one county, not one state, one county, you guys. That's why. And I was recently at Pantages Theater, and the homeless area is it's unbelievable. In Pantages, for anybody that wants to know, is kind of in the touristy area of Los Angeles. It's off of Hollywood Boulevard, where they basically do the Oscars. They do massive amounts of celebrity stuff there. And there's encampments there, meaning like there's just tents. There's people that have full on like roofing. They have full on like walls, buildings for homeless people that just had been made out of wood and stuff like that. I've seen actually photos of literally entire like little huts that are with walls made of wood and a roofing that have like actual security camera, and they're stealing electricity from the local building to run the security camera on the side of the street on the curb. It is mind-blowing what's going on here. The air quality was so bad, I'm not even exaggerating, that I was sitting in the Pantages Theater after walking around Hollywood Boulevard, observing literally people doing drugs on the street. There was people like keeled over doing the fentanyl crawl, just homeless people literally just laying on the Hollywood Walk of Stars, just smoking, people pushing like empty wheelchairs, wearing like medical garb that you would be if you were a patient. If you wanted like a reality of it, the best analogy that I can give, and I'm not exaggerating this one bit or trying to hype it up, think about like an apocalypse, but with like mental asylum people walking around. And I'm not trying to belittle the homeless people, but that's the best way I can picture it. If you had to create like an imagery in your mind, think of like apocalypse with homeless people, some of them partially naked, pushing wheelchairs, talking to themselves, hairs everywhere, dirty. It smells terrible. There's drugs on the ground in the most touristy of areas, folks. And the air quality was so bad after an hour of walking around. I was sitting in Pantages for a show, because I love musicals and Broadway and stuff. And I'm sitting there going like, I can still smell the air in here, and it's still bad. And you want to know what it was? It was me. The air quality was so bad in Los Angeles. It smelled so bad, like human feces and waste. I can't even describe it to you. It doesn't smell like poop or anything like that, or fecal matter. It's an oddball smell, and it was stuck on me. That's how bad the air quality was. I had never gotten home so quick and stripped off all my clothes and showered than that. It's just crazy. So people are flocking out of Los Angeles because of that. And I would like to share that story with you. I've really thought about just hopping in the car and going up there, because it's about a 35-hour drive depending on traffic, and kind of showing you guys behind the scenes and what stuff looks like in LA. It's just terrible. Quote, "There's a fast, clear, and sharp spike during the pandemic," said Paul Ong, director of the Center for Neighborhood Knowledge at UCLA, of the net population loss in Los Angeles. Ong attributed the exodus from California, or Los Angeles rather, to a number of reasons, including increased housing prices, which is true, and working remotely. He also said that because of the pandemic, people moved away from the denser urban core where COVID-19 risk was perceived as being higher. Well, it's interesting they're talking about just about COVID, and there definitely is truth to that. But again, leaving out the homeless issue, as well as leaving out the crime issue, as well as leaving out the fact that California sucks at everything and it's ran by Democrats and everybody's so fed up with it, including Democrats, that they're leaving. According to the State Department of Finance, California lost about 211,000 people in 1 year. Nearly half of that was from Los Angeles County. Records show Los Angeles lost around 160,000 people the previous year. This trend follows a pattern of population decline in California over several years, with the COVID pandemic exacerbating the situation, which is true. I mean, the lockdown stuff was just freaking crazy. The governor of California literally locked down the entire state, and people couldn't open up their businesses. All the while, that a-hole was sitting there eating freaking lunch at, I think it was called the French Market or something. There was a restaurant called something like that, like the French Market or something. And he was just eating with all his wealthy buddies. So everybody else was getting screwed while he's having a freaking good old time going out. So again, the trend continues. The decline in population in California is second only to that of New York. Interesting. What do they have in common? Oh, they're both Democrat-ran states. Perfect. Which lost approximately 15,000 more people. However, net immigration out of California is higher than any other state, with New York being the second highest. Experts attributed the exodus to the state's high cost of living, which again is true, especially when it comes to housing, as well as long commutes and overcrowding in urban areas. So what should take me about 25, 30 minutes to get to downtown LA is about an hour and a half, to put it in perspective. When I used to work in Burbank, there were some days it would take me about 3 hours to get home from work. That's not a joke. That is a real number, by the way. So it took me anywhere from 2 hours to 3 hours just to get home, to travel about 30, 32 miles. Population crime and overcrowding has been listed as reasons why people are leaving the state. In addition, homeless encampments, which I referred to already, in Los Angeles has become increasingly burdensome on residents. In December 2022, newly elected Mayor Karen Bass, who I've actually seen speak in person, she sucks at her job too, officially declared a state of emergency over the city's homeless crisis. So what's she going to do? She's just going to give them houses. And some of these houses, like if you were to look at the boxes that go on our big rigs to transport goods and goods all across the United States, they want to transfer and convert those into kind of affordable housing at a cost of anywhere from like $500,000 to $750,000 per one. Yeah, you heard me correctly. One unit is going to cost $500,000 to $750,000 per unit for a homeless person to live in. Basically, probably free of charge. There's also cases where literally they're just giving homeless people $600,000 just to be there. I mean, beachfront property with a tent, you look at Venice or anywhere else, I live on the coastal areas, they're literally just giving them cell phones, food, $600 just to live out there. It's so mind-blowing, you guys. They're literally giving them stations to do drugs, by the way. They're offering them free syringes and places to literally do drugs. This is how crazy the state is, and they can't fathom why people are leaving. They can't fathom it. The data shows that while California population shrinks, other states have seen population growth. States such as Utah have cautioned Californians about moving to their state. Governor Spencer Cox of Utah said last week that California should stay in California. Now, here's the thing. This is the part I want to bring up. I agree with you to some extent. But one thing is, if you have a Republican leaving the state of California, you guys, statistically, and I can't think of the study off the top of my head right now, the study showed, or does show, that Republican Californians are more Republican and conservative than almost any other demographic of Republicans in other states. So if you have a Republican leaving the state of California, you should welcome them with open arms, because odds are they're more conservative Republican than you are. And they're more likely to vote for your rights, your freedom of speech, your right to have the Second Amendment, your right to bear arms, than actuality of other Republicans and conservatives would in your area. So just be careful of that. Now, if you have a Democrat or a leftist coming from California to your state, I'm sorry, folks. I'm real sorry. But you should open up a conservative Republican with open arms and invite them into your house and give them some love, because like I said, odds are, statistically, they are more Republican than probably you are, or conservative. Texas and Florida experienced the highest surge of population between April 2020 and July 2020, with approximately 884,000 and 707,000 people joining their respective states. I've thought about getting out of the state of California because it's terrible, but I want to make sure I do it right, folks. Mostly because, one, the state's going down the drain. It's expensive to live here. You have the income tax of the state just through the roof. We're one of the highest tax states in the union. I think Pennsylvania beats us out in some areas, but it's going down the drain. You got to love the fact that there's these Democrats here that still vote for the same policies, and they're okay with living in this, clearly, because they still vote Democrat. So I just wanted to bring you guys the news for today. As always, heck, we went on pretty long here, almost 30-something minutes, but hope you enjoyed the show. I love hanging out with you guys. Honestly, I've been really dragging out these shows just because I love hanging out with you all so much, and I hope you're okay with that. I know some people want the 10-minute, the less than 20-minute shows, but really, I mean, that was one of my goals when doing this, was yes, to upload videos and watch them myself to see how my viewpoint has changed over the years, and just as a fun hobby as well, and to kind of correct my own thinking on things when I rewatch it and listen to you guys and what you have to say. But really, the other component is to build a community here of patriots that I can interact with and get to know. I live in the state of California. There's not a ton of patriots here that you can always go out and hang out with. So this gives me an avenue to hang out with all of you. I love being in the live chat with all of you. Please, if you're fearful of writing the live chat or something like that, hang out with us. There's a lot of great people. I know most of you by name now that freaking go in the live chat all the time. So I don't know what side it is on here, but check it out or leave a comment down below. Again, I do read all of them. Just because I don't heart it or comment doesn't mean I don't read it. I do see them. And I just appreciate all of you. Again, be on the lookout for February 26th. We have some announcements, some goodies for you guys. I'm a one-man show here. So February 26th, we're probably looking anywhere from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Again, I'll make more of an announcement probably through this week or next week. So if you want to come hang out with us for, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour max, come hang out, spend some time, get a drink, and kind of, cheer me on a little bit as well as all of you, because we're kind of all in this together. So as always, hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for being awesome patriots. Leave us a comment down below, and I'll see you tomorrow here on The Ball Brad Show.